My name is Susan Mawyer, and I'm a member of Clifford Baptist Church. Clifford Baptist is in the village of Clifford in Amherst County, Virginia. We're in the central part of the state of Virginia. Usually on Sunday mornings during worship service, we have a class for our 4 to 6-year-olds called Shining Lights. We study the Bible. We learn about God's plan for us. We learn about how much God loves us. We have a good time. Well, because of the COVID virus, right now it's not quite time for us to open up all of our children's classes. It's just not quite safe enough. So we decided that we would bring the Shining Lights class to you. So beginning this Sunday, June 28th, there will be packets of information and a lesson, a Shining Lights lesson. They'll be located in the airlock of the church. The airlock is right where the front doors come into our church. So there will be packets there for you to pick up anytime you want, take home, and I'm getting ready to teach the first lesson. So maybe you can follow along with me and have fun working those packets of fun things to do and information and things to learn. So tonight we are going to start to explore the Bible. And the book that we're going to explore tonight is the book of Ezra. Ezra is in the Old Testament, which is at the front of the Bible. So tonight we're going to start at the beginning of the chapter of Ezra. And I'm going to tell you a story that God put in the Bible in chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Ezra. It's a very important story, and I think it teaches us a really good lesson. So God's people were called the Israelites, and God loved the Israelites. They still are, his chosen people. But along the way, the Israelites stopped loving God, and they turned their back on God. They disobeyed him. They didn't listen to him. God even tried to warn the Israelites that if they didn't turn back to him, if they didn't listen to him, that very bad things would happen to them. But they were hard-headed, and they would not listen, and they kept disobeying God. So, because God loved his people so much, he wanted them to turn back to him. He decided he would discipline them. He would punish them so that they would turn back to him. Now, we don't normally think of the words discipline and punishment going along with loving someone, but it really can. God was willing to do anything to bring his people back to him. And so he disciplined, he punished them so that they would realize that they had turned away from God and they needed to turn back. So let's see if they did. The way God punished his people was he allowed a bad king to come in and take over their land. The king destroyed the temple. The temple is like our church now, where people worship. He destroyed the temple, so there was nowhere to worship anymore. He destroyed buildings. He took everything that had any value, that was worth anything, back with him to his country. And do you know what he did to God's people, the Israelites? He took them back to his country too. And it was a long, long ways from their home in Jerusalem. Not only did he take them away from their home in Jerusalem, he made them slaves. This king made God's chosen people his slaves and slaves for his sons. And it lasted a long, long time. God's people, the Israelites, were slaves in this foreign country for 70 years. Now that's a long time. As old as I am, I'm not quite 70 years old. So that's even a long time to me. But do you know what God did at the end of 70 years? As bad as the bad king was, God allowed a good king to come into Babylon and to let God's people go back home. This good king's name was Cyrus, and he told the people that God was going to let him rebuild that temple, rebuild the place that the people worship in Jerusalem. So he told all of the Israelites, if you want to go home to Jerusalem to help rebuild that temple, you are free to go. You're no longer slaves. You can go. So the Israelites' families and their leaders prepared to go home. Again, this was a long, long journey. And as they prepared, the neighbors that they had in Babylon gave them gold and silver and animals, and even King Cyrus gave them things to take back to Jerusalem to put in the temple once it was rebuilt. So the men and the women and the children gathered. They went in different groups at different times, but they gathered and they walked that long journey back to Jerusalem. The Bible doesn't tell us how long it took them, but I was doing some reading today, and I found one place that it said it probably took them about 4 months to walk back to Jerusalem. That's a long time to walk. Well, as soon as God's people, the Israelites, got home, they gave offerings to build the temple. They gave money, or they gave things that could be sold to raise money to build the temple. They did that first when they got home. That was one of the ways that I believe they were showing God that they were returning to him, that they were willing to listen to him and obey him. It was after they gave their offerings to rebuild the temple, then they found places to live and to settle down with their families. Then the people built an altar. Remember, the temple was gone. They didn't have a place to go worship, a place where they could sing and pray together, talk to God together. So they built an altar, and it was probably made out of rocks. And it was just something, a symbol for the people, a place for the people to gather together to let God know that they loved him once again and they were going to follow him. Well, the people also gave money to the workers who were working on the temple. They gave food to their neighbors, and their neighbors brought them wood. God's people began to work on the temple, and everyone helped in some ways. So probably some of the stronger people were there, and they were helping to actually build the temple. Some people were probably fixing meals to keep the ones that were working, to keep them nourished and healthy. Some probably gave money, but the Bible tells us that everyone helped in the building of the temple. You know, we can look back at this story now and see that God loved his people so much that even when they turned away from him, he didn't let them go. You know, I always tell you, we can't run from God. No matter what we do, God will always love us. And God loved his people, the Israelites. He loved them so much that he let them go through some pain and some suffering so they would realize what they missed by not following God. God punished them. He sent them away from home. He sent them away from everything and everyone they knew, and he even made them slaves. But I think that helped the people realize we miss God. We disobeyed God. We want to go home. We want to serve our God again. You know what? God will do the same thing for us. If we try to turn and run and walk away from God, sometimes he will let bad things happen to us just to remind us and show us how it is to live without him. He never wants to live without us. He doesn't want us to live without him. And he will do everything to bring us back. So just remember, if you don't want to read your Bible, if you don't want to pray, if you say, I'd rather be out playing than talking to God, I really don't want to read my Bible, I don't care what God says, just remember, God still cares about you. And he might allow some bad things to happen to you to remind you, hey, the life I'm living right now is because, and the bad things that are happening to me is because I'm not obeying God. God, please forgive me. God, help me to know what you want me to do. Help me to listen to you. Help me to obey you. And then you can turn back to God. He's always there waiting for us with open arms. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. And don't forget, go to the airlock at Clifford Baptist Church and get your packet for Shining Lights every Sunday from now until we have class again. God bless you.